GDP, what is it? Well, gross domestic product, but what does that mean? Well, let's take a look at GDP by how it's calculated, what the different components of it are. And when we do that, we can start off with consumption. This is 70% of GDP. That's all the things that you buy and the services, goods and services like physician services, groceries, office supplies. If we look at it separated by services and by goods, it's about 1/3 services and 2/3 goods. So the lion's share of GDP is consumption. There's also government spending. Government spends money on goods and services, buying space shuttles, supplying the army, road construction. Goods and services by the government are another 20% of GDP, and that is a little more than 1/3 federal. Most of government spending is at the state and local level. Another piece of GDP is called private investment. Private investment is all of the buildings, like apartment buildings, hotels, the equipment, the inventories by private business. That makes up 15% of GDP. You can see here that when we add up 70 and 20 and 15, we end up with some overlap where it's actually more than 100%. That's because the fourth part of GDP is trade. Imports and exports. Imports are red because they're negative. Imports are made in another country, so they're not part of gross domestic product, and they actually take away from GDP. Our imports in the U.S. are more than our exports by about that much, looked at as GDP. So if we subtract exports from imports, we have this sliver that's left over that's negative, and notice that that exactly matches this overlap. It's about 5% of GDP. So that's what GDP is. 70% consumer spending, 20% government spending, 15% business private investment, and minus 5% for the trade deficit.